Good evening, everyone. How are you all? I'm sure you're having a good time with your family members. In the previous session, we discussed about registration. So by now, we know what is registration, what is the difference between registration, reservation, pre-registration, and check-in. So I'm continuing from there, and we are talking about systems of registration in this particular session. So by the end of this session, you will be able to explain the different systems of registration, which includes manual system, semi-automatic, and automatic system of registration. So before we start with the manual system of registration, we must first of all discuss that what is registration. So registration is gathering the information from all the arriving guests, which actually is mandatory by law. So every hotel, be it a small, medium, large, or a huge hotel, will have to register the guest, will have to get the information about the guest from the guest. It may be in the form of a GRC, that is guest registration card, which you have practiced in your role plays last semester. So it may be in the form of GRC, or it may be in any other form. So here we will discuss that what happens when a hotel is a small hotel with less number of rooms, and therefore it will not be possible for a hotel to have individual GRCs for each arriving guest. Since registration is mandatory by law, that means every hotel has to get it done. So what are the various ways apart from GRC that a hotel can get the registration of guests? So under the manual system, where the hotel is a small hotel, how are they going to register a guest? So the best way for them would be the use of bound book or a hard bound register. You all use registers, right? But this register is going to be slightly different from the register that you use, because this register is going to be little larger in size, heavier and bulky. If you watch old Bollywood movies, and if you have seen some hotel scene wherein a guest is coming and he wants a room in the hotel, he wants to stay in the hotel, you must have seen that there used to be a red colored register kept at the counter, and the receptionist used to offer a pen to the guest and ask the guest to fill it up. There were columns made in that register, and the guest was required to fill up the details of himself, his stay, his room number with his signature in those columns made. That process is actually the registration, and that book that was used for registration is called as red book. Red book. All right, so basically in this bound book or hardbound register, a big register is used which is kept on the reception counter, and the guest fills it up in his own handwriting with his signature. So now what are the advantages? Since that book is heavy, so obviously misplacing it is not possible, and whatever information we require for any guest who has come any time during that particular year, it is very much there in that particular register. So that is one advantage. And the second advantage is that since the pages are hard bound, the pages are intact, there is no need to file it. However, when we say that there are certain disadvantages, yes, there is. The first and the foremost being that the information of the guests who have already registered is seen by the guest who would be coming after. So there is no chances of keeping the information of already arrived guests confidential. Also, since everybody would be using that register, the pages might become loose and the entire register will look shabby, because one register will be used for the entire year. So it will have minimum 365 pages, minimum, right? One page, at least one page for one day. So it will become loose and dirty by the end of 6 7 months. Pre-registration is not possible, and if, though it is very difficult, but if the register gets misplaced, then all the records will be lost. So now there has to be an alternative to this bound book, to this red book. Please remember red book, it's a very important term. So in the manual system of registration, when there are no computers available, when there is no technology being used, so one is the bound book. So the alternative to this hard bound register is the loose pages, loose sheets. So the second, which comes under manual system of registration, is the loose leaf, which ultimately gets filed and it becomes a register. So we say loose leaves. That means one page or two pages based on the occupancy of the hotel will be used every day. So if the occupancy is low, there will be one sheet used. If the occupancy is more, then two or three sheets may be used, which by the end of the day will be stapled and filed. So this system is suitable for medium-sized hotels wherein there are more number of rooms. For example, if the hotel has 50 number of rooms and the occupancy for today is 80%, so in that case 40 guests would be arriving. Minimum 40 guests would be arriving. So there has to be enough space for those 40 guests to register themselves. Basically, this system will be suitable for a medium-sized hotel. Earlier was for the small hotels, whereas for this system is for medium-sized hotels. So in case if there is more demand, more sheets can be added to it. The advantages is that obviously since it is one sheet or two sheets per day, so it will give a neat, clean look to the counter. And if the sheet is lost by the carelessness of the receptionist, then only one day's information will be lost. Talking about the disadvantages or demerits, then it is very easy for the sheet to get lost and only one guest can register at a time. This is the disadvantage which is common to both the manual system of registration. Here, if the sheet is not fully filled, because there are very few arrivals on one particular day, then the page would be a waste. Now coming to the semi-automatic system of registration, which you have already practiced it. You know about GRC and you have already used it in your role play, so we will not go into lengths to discuss this. You know that this is the most prevalent system, most preferred system, wherein every arriving guest would have one independent individual GRC. Alright, so here the advantage is that even if there are 10 guests arriving at the reception at the same time, all of them can be registered simultaneously. And pre-registration is also very much possible. Information can also be kept confidential. And if pre-registration is being done, then of course personal attention will be given to the guests since the staff would be relatively free. Sometimes, when the guests are receiving group arrivals, then there becomes a lot of chaos at the reception. So in this case, if the hotel is using GRCs for registration, then that chaos can be handled or tackled with, because the hotel can opt for a separate counter for the group wherein the GRCs are already printed and they are kept, and whenever the group arrives it can be dealt in a separate space which is away from the reception counters, so there will be no chaos at that point of time. All right, and then the GRCs which are already ready before the arrival of the guest, already printed, can be systematically stored based on the alphabetically based on alphabets or in the order of date of arrival. Disadvantage is, of course, it is very expensive because each guest will have his own individual GRC, and of course the chances of being misplaced is also there. Now coming to the automatic system, that is the express check-in or the self check-in terminals. This system is very popular abroad in large hotels, especially the chain hotels like Marriott, Hilton. They prefer to have the self check-in terminals. This is basically preferred for guests with reservations, since they have already uh, informed about their details to the hotel. They already have told what kind of room would they prefer to stay in, and other details as well. So all that information is already stored in that self check-in terminal. So when the guest arrives, he can register himself. It is like an ATM machine, which I'm sure all of you have used it. So when the guest reaches to that self check-in terminals and he enters his name, and then the machine would ask certain questions, and then like what will be the mode of payment, and since the machine already knows what kind of room the guest would like to stay in, so accordingly the machine will allot the room to the guest, and the card key will also be produced by the machine, and it will ask for the mode of payment. And in that mode of payment, it is basically preferred for guests who would be paying through the credit cards. So they have to swipe their credit card, or they have to insert their credit card, and the payment mode will also be established. So basically, big hotels, chain hotels would prefer to have the self check-in terminals, because this will need less staff in the hotel. And you know that manpower abroad is very expensive. So they would prefer to have less staff and more of these technologies in their hotel. So apart from having these terminals in the hotel, most of the hotels also place these terminals at airports, so that it will take less time for the guest to register himself. He can register while waiting for his luggage. He can get himself checked in the hotel. So when he reaches the hotel, he will immediately go to his room and rest. So this is all about the different systems of registration. If there are any doubts or queries, please contact me. You have my email ID, you have my WhatsApp number, my contact number. So if there is any problem, please contact me. We will for sure have a doubt clearing session later after we finish with this particular topic. So thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.